of us know Brazil for its beautiful scenery, beaches, and also the Olympic Games that was hosted in Rio this past month. But through all the wonderful events and beautiful scenery, there is also hardship and poverty for many other Brazilians. Over 6.3 million people live in Brazil, and over 1.4 million of its population lives in the slums of Brazil today. A favela, which in Portuguese means slum, is a makeshift house or shanty home that is made out of cement or brick. There are over 763 favelas in Rio today. The first favela came about in the late 1800s when soldiers who fought in the Canudos War settled in the hilltop of Rio de Janeiro. Over time, many of the favelas became very unsanitary, and at the time, residents who were of African descent were forced out of the city of Rio and into the hilltop of Rio de Janeiro. Also, 70% of the blacks who live in the favelas today are of the poorest Brazilians. Life in the favelas is very hard for many Brazilians. One of the most poorest areas in Brazil is called Mangueira, which also has many demolished homes. Many of the homes have sewage running through them and also through the streets where children play. Many of the teenagers who live in these poor environments gravitate to gang violence and drug lords who take them in and give them weapons such as AK-47s to kill innocent individuals, police officers, and also rivalry gangs. There is also scarce water and scarce food. Many of the residents get their water from a water hose outside of where they live, where they have to bathe and also drink from. Many of the residents go to food banks or that provide food for them only for that night and only to get them through the day. And for the next few days, they have to fend for themselves and actually go through trash just to provide food for their families. Life in the favelas, as you can tell, is very hard. The violence is extremely harder for them. Residents who are fighting for their freedom from the police brutality and also the drug lords that rule in every area. On January 4th, police and drug traffickers engaged in a violent act of shootouts that in the process killed 20-year-old Wellington Sambino of Mangueira. And in the process, many of the residents said he was just a 20-year-old young kid who was making a living as a vendor. On the rise of Wellington's killing, there also has been a high-profile case of a young Mangueiran man who was brutally murdered and tortured by police. According to Brazil's homicide rate, there are 30 to 35 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants, putting Brazil at the top 20 of intentional inhabitant homicide rates. There have been many disappearances and kidnappings of young men and women who are either in gangs, prostitutes, or either innocent children. Many of the cases have never been solved. Also, Brazil comes on the rise of, a high importer of cocaine. It is also one of the top international drug routes in Brazil today. In conclusion, I not only want you to know of the undeniable heartache and crime and also poverty in Brazil, but I also want you to see through the eyes of the Brazilian people how life is for them day by day and how they struggle through their children being killed and also not having food for their families for the next day. I hope you enjoyed it, and I thank you for watching. Any questions?
Favela.
Yes.
Why is that called favela?
Favela is basically, in Portuguese, it is a Portuguese word that means slum. So it's different because of their language. So it means in Portuguese slum.
Okay.